Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Inside the Mirror podcast. I'm your host, Kyle David. If you didn't know, now you know. Today, I have a guest with me. Like I just told him, this is a long overdue podcast. Him and I have been in communication for a couple years. We connected through music back in the day through Instagram. Dude's super talented and just a cool guy to talk to, and somebody that I think is just a kindred spirit. So my boy BP Broderick Perkins is on the podcast today. Bro, thank you for being here.
I appreciate it. Thank you for the invite, and I'm looking forward to the conversation. Just genuine talking.
That's
how it is. Yep.
That's what it is. And if anybody listens, they know that like that's my whole thing. And I think you and I talked about this is like just having authentic, meaningful conversations, right? Like not like these scripted, this is your 12 questions, or let's just talk about this. Like talking to real people and having authentic conversations about life, right? Like anything that involves who you are, what you do, like that's kind of what I'm all about. And so yeah, let's just get into it, man. Like kind of give us like the 3, 5, 6 minute rundown of like who you are, like kind of describe yourself and what you're all about.
Yeah, man. I'm a creative, a music artist, producer, songwriter, getting into singing more, but definitely a lyricist, man. Love just compiling songs and telling stories, man. That's something that I'm just big on, and just love writing poetry, putting words together. And so I think that's one gift that I have to give a message to people, and to bring hope and inspiration. And yeah, that's really who I am. Went to the University of North Texas, and I have a degree in recreation event sports management. My minor's in marketing. I'm thinking about going back to get my master's, so I'm still contemplating that and kind of working through some stuff, and maybe like an MBA or something, but I'm not sure. So we'll see. But yeah, I'm a creative at heart. Very good at giving message through music, and it's just a tool, man, to reach people. And that's really who I am. Started that at a young age and just stuck with it, man. So
Love it. Yeah, bro. Like, so like I said, we've kind of connected and known each other kind of semi through just, obviously the internet. Thank God for the internet and Instagram. But
right.
just following your musical journey and just like you're super talented, man. Like just to commend you, like you said, like you have a way of like putting a message in music, but you're so gifted that like it's captivating. I guess that's the word I'd use. You have a
Man,
captivating way of making music. It's like,
that's encouraging. I appreciate that.
yeah, bro, like I'm a big fan. So like take us back. Like where did you like get bit by the music bug? Or I think you said like it
Mm,
was kind of in your family, right?
right. Yeah. So let's see. My brothers, they're jazz musicians. They went to school in Michigan, I think, when they're 17, 18. They left the house, and then they went to New York on their own. So they're jazz musicians. One plays the sax, the other plays the trombone. And they've worked probably on numerous tracks, maybe even Grammy tracks. I'm not sure all of that, but I'm sure they're on some type of production credits. My cousin in San Antonio has a duo group called Cadillac Music, with phenomenal, like funkadelic, alternative hip hop type style. That's really what I drew my inspiration, looking at them growing up back in summers in San Antonio, watching them record in a closet, so that was cool. My dad can sing very well, so he's got a lot of soul. Yeah, and my brother does spoken word. He's a great like Christian artist, does spoken word, very good with words. I think we're all gifted in that way with just utilize. It's really cool to see that family tree kind of expand on creativity through musical elements. My stepdad played the bass growing up. Yeah, so just all around me, man. So that's kind of a little backstory of my family and kind of growing up around. I didn't really get started, I think, sixth grade. It was MySpace music days, if anybody remembers that, and recording on an MP3, recording on an
Throwback.
MP3 player. Yeah, man, the top five, and had your little song in the profile background, and
I remember that.
the mirror selfies with that awkward side pose, and with your tank top on. You know how it is. Um, so yeah, started doing that MySpace music, playing AAU basketball at the time. Me and my friends would just be kicking freestyles, and I really looked up to Young Money, Cash Money at the time, Tiger, Lil Wayne, Drake, and then I don't know how that transitioned to becoming like a real lyricist. And I think well, I'd say my freshman or I think sophomore year, I started getting into poetry. That kind of goes hand in hand with my testimony as being a Christian and stuff like that. I really wasn't doing music, and I was just writing like poems, kind of like the book of Psalm, Psalms and
Mm,
stuff like that, Proverbs. So I was kind of like that was kind of my motto, my philosophy behind poetry, and so that's kind of how I started into my musical journey. And I started producing me and my cousin when we were like 13, 14, using FL Studio.
mm.
I had downloaded like an old version of Cubase. No, I think it was Pro Tools. And was using that Mixcraft Acoustica, but we're using FL Studio like 14, so I know it. I know it in and outs of everything. Little tips and tools and tricks to make the process faster. I love sampling. I started off sampling like Kanye, and I drew inspiration from him and Pharrell and other producers like that. Yeah, and so sampling was kind of like how I started into it. Then once I kind of met more musicians as time went on through, college and stuff like that, I really wanted to bring that live sound into music because I felt like it was dying. Because most stuff in modern music is more trap sound and that upbeat bounce and kind of the same cadence and flows and stuff like that. So I kind of found my own style with like some R&B soul and then adding the lyricist to it as well. So trying to be like well rounded and shaped. And so I kind of grown into Young Money, Cash Money, songs like that to my own style. And so that's kind of how it was. Yeah.
Bro, you like I told you this when we talked the last time. The couple of the most recent songs that you put out, like they remind me of J.Cole. Like just the like
Mm,
relaxed but bars and the
yeah.
cadence. It's like very. And have you heard that before? I think have you heard that before?
Yeah, people I get that comparison a lot. I think it's awesome. I've heard J. Cole for sure. I think that's probably the main one. I
Mm-hmm.
really started listening to J. Cole my freshman year of college. That's when I got into him. Now I'm 26, so when I was probably 19 or 18, somewhere, I didn't really listen to him before, but I knew he had the Come Up was his first mixtape. What was that? 2009. I think the warm up was 2011, but he had music way out. Then he signed to Jay-Z. I followed his story. He was waiting for him outside the gate. He didn't accept this tape. And then he ended up producing one of his tracks on one of his albums. I forgot which one. But yeah, I just followed that story. It was just his story was just inspiring because it was just like how relatable he is because he's so relatable, and I think that's what makes great artists is when you could tell a story that like man, I can familiarize myself with those things. And
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we both have a biracial background, stepfather situation, and just yeah, I think growing up seeing those two worlds, black and white, and seeing the world this way, that way, and just his storytelling with love and relationships. And I feel like I dealt with the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to think of what songs. I mean, there's so many different songs he has on his mixtapes, and that's when I started listening to him and really influenced my wordplay and my delivery. And then, yeah, I think that's probably the main person that I've gotten.
Hmm. It's always interesting how like people are influenced right by the sounds and like the people that they listen to, but also like
Mm,
the stories and the content that kind
mm,
of right, like you said, is relatable. Like I think that's
mm-hmm,
something that I really respect about you is like none of your music is like, hey, let me just rhyme this word with this word and talk about partying.
mm,
Like again, not to knock people, but that's like kind of the trend, right? Like the
mm,
majority of like hip hop these days is like I shouldn't say the majority. It is tough sometimes to find like relatable
mm.
hip hop that's this quality, right? Because
Right,
like it's just not like the most like put up on a pedestal what am I trying
right.
to say? It's not the most mainstream thing right now.
Right, popularized or
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. And so like that's what I really like about you is like you're very authentic. Like just besides being relatable, like it's authentic to you. It's not
Mm,
trying to be someone you're not. I mean, that's what I think all the greatest artists have is like authenticity to themselves, which gives them longevity because you can be
mm,
authentic forever. It's hard to fake it for very long, but it's
right.
easy to be authentic forever. You know what I'm saying?
100%. 100%.
How's it like you said, like obviously growing up in a biracial family, how was that experience? I'm just curious because like I've known a few people that have said, like my old buddy Ramel I used to live with, he had a similar
Mm,
situation. And it was just interesting to hear the story of like being in like these two different environments as the same person growing up and having like two different
mm,
experiences at once, you know?
right. It was yeah, I mean, I was so young. My parents got a divorce when I was 4. I think they'd been together for a year, a little bit before that for a while. And my parents met. at a hospital. My mom's a nurse. She's been a nurse for 20 plus years. And so they met at a hospital in San Antonio, two different worlds. So my dad grew up in Denver Heights in San Antonio, kind of the projects on the east side of San Antonio. That's one of the songs of my project, The Evolution of Broderick Perkins. That's the first track called The East Side. I kind of get into that, and past mixtapes. I talk about my dad's side and going to stay there in the summer, seeing my cousin, and kind of getting that experience as well. But yeah, I don't think, man, when was biracial marriage legalized? I think probably late 70s, 78. That's
Really?
fairly new. It's fair. I think it was like 70s, early 80s, maybe before that. Maybe I'm tripping. It probably was like 60s or I don't know. Because there
It
was
was
that one movie.
illegal before that?
I think it was. I don't know. It was probably illegal up to. There's a one movie where the white guy is with the black woman. Oh, I forgot what
Mm.
it's called, but they basically were like the pioneers. I mean, there's more interracial marriages and stuff. Obviously, people were in relationship, but that movie kind of showed the perspective of it. I don't know when it was passed, but anyways, interracial relationship is fairly new still. I mean, that was probably 30 years later from when it was legalized. So it's
That's so
still
crazy.
it's weird because I was born in 95, so they had to be together before that, right? Early, maybe
Right.
90. So it's still fairly new. So I mean, I'm sure there's racism. Maybe my family felt some type of way, and I
Mhm.
never want to talk down on nobody because people change, and that's not my place to say those things. But definitely some of that experience is probably because my dad is a darker black guy, and so with a white woman, that kind of shaped. And then seeing my mom's side, a lot of my uncles are very successful,
Mhm.
college degrees, very smart. Some went to UT. I mean, one's I believe is accountant, one's CEO for companies and being recruited by companies, and now he makes a lot of money. I mean, so yeah, I think there's that duality.
Mhm.
Obviously, there's rich black people and there's poor black people too. So there's another, people might deal with that type of story.
Mhm.
So yeah, but that was just my story. My dad grew up poor. My mom's side, they probably start off poor as well too, but gain success as well. And that's
Mhm.
kind of like what it is. So that me trying to figure out my identity in the midst of that, black and white, and don't feel black enough, don't feel white enough.
Mhm.
So yeah, it's crazy because I grew up, and when I went to middle school, I was around more white people. I feel like in Haggard, and I really like white girls growing up. But
Mhm.
now as I got older, I don't know. I really like black women more.
Come on.
So yeah, so I don't know. It's just kind of flipped. So yeah, that's kind of my background. I'm sure there's racism and going on in my family or people on the outside. So just the way it was perceived.
Mhm.
Yeah. So.
It's so interesting, like, because that's that saying, perception is reality. Like how people perceive things becomes their reality, even if it's false or even if it's not accurate. And like I think we
Mm,
just deal that with that in the world in general, not even having to do
hmm
with race, just in life. Like people see
hmm
things and their perception of it becomes their reality, like their truth to them, even if it's not the truth.
Right.
Like we live in this
Right.
world of social media and everything on the
Mm,
internet is, can be kind of doctored to say what it may. But it's so
mm,
hard in this world to like find truth anymore, at least
right.
in my own experience and opinion. Like it's so hard to find truth sometimes. Like what do you think
Mm,
about that? Like what how do you find truth in a world that's full of like deception and darkness? And that's probably more a spiritual question, but like obviously you're
mm.
a believer,
Yeah, I'd
I'm a
love to tap in it.
believer. Yeah, like how do
Yeah,
we
I
find
definitely want
truth
to tap
in a
into that.
world full of deception and just doctored up things? You know what I'm saying? Like,
Right. Oh, that's a brilliant question. And side note, I looked up the legalization of interracial marriage. It said
yeah, when was it?
1967. So yeah, so somewhere
That's
around there.
crazy.
So 60. I mean, that's
It's not that
30
long ago.
years. That's
Yeah,
kind of close. I mean,
that's
from
crazy.
95 when I was born. So about 30 years. That's pretty crazy. Still fresh and new. Ooh.
Yeah,
But yeah, touching on that to find truth in a
yeah.
dark, broken world that's seeking, because the world is offering this facade, this masquerade of everything is needs to look like this. You need to have this status. You need to have this following. You need to look this certain way. That's why celebrities are not satisfied, and they commit suicide, they take their life. People are hooked on drugs and they're getting plastic surgery because their cheekbone structure doesn't look like this. Their lips aren't thick enough,
Yeah.
or their hair is falling out. So now, like, look at LeBron. Let me get a hairpiece. Let me get that surgically implanted.
Is
So
what it is.
right, this world is just constantly seeking self gratification, approval of man, and it's just in brokenness we seek our own foolishness, and the
Mm,
way that may there's a way that seems right to man, but the end is death. And I was at
mm,
church yesterday, and this guy was talking to me and brought up that verse. I was like, yeah, that's true. Like, we seek our own way, and it leads to destruction. But God is calling us so much more, and that's what I see in the gospel. That's what
mm,
you know transitioned my life, is seeing the goodness of God, and that his grace, his kindness leads man to repentance,
mm.
to lay ourselves down in humility and say, God, you take full control. And Christ was that perfect example in the midst of a wicked and perverse and broken culture. He stood the test. And
Come on.
yeah, I mean, I feel like I could just start ranting on different things, but yeah, I feel like people are constantly seeking that hope, and seeking truth. But they're seeking truth in the wrong things, and they're valuing the wrong things, and those things become idol, right? Idols,
Mhm.
things that we worship, things that we find hope in, things that we find comfort in, things that we find satisfaction in above God. It becomes a God thing in their lives. Yeah, but Christ, he offers more in fullness, in joy, and hope. And that's the whole point of the gospel story. And that's why it's
Come
good
on.
news, because man is broken, man is sinful, and that separation. But God reconciles us through Christ and his atonement, his death, and he becomes a substitute. And I think that's huge. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if you want to touch on that, go ahead.
Come on.
That's,
Well, we talked about this last time. We talked a little bit
yeah.
about like kind of along those lines of like, how do you define success in life? Like you had made a
Mm,
comment, I think last time along the lines of, you know, I love doing this. And so success for me, something along the lines of like success for you isn't like financial or fame necessarily. Those may be byproducts of what you do.
hmm.
But you were saying like
Right.
just talking about loving doing music and loving being a creative, and that's like
Yeah.
success. Like talk about that for a minute, because I think people define
Yeah. I think.
success so wrong in this day and age, you know what I'm saying, in this culture.
Mm. Yeah, I think success for me is just that peace and contentment that comes with what you're called to do and walking in that.
Mm,
And then, the byproduct may be fame or a little bit more of a following and stuff like that, but that shouldn't define you of your personhood and who God who has created you to be, because your identity ultimately should be in Christ alone. Like, all those external factors that come in, they're not always granted or given. But like, God, expects you to do if you are given small things, he wants to see your attitude and behavior towards how you react to that. Whether you're doing a show with 10 people in the crowd, I mean, if your attitude and disposition with 10 people is not well, I mean, and your life's not lining up with his word outside of that, like, why would he give you a platform with
mm,
500,000 people in the crowd? And I mean, you get these
mhm,
mega church pastors, and you get teachers who get caught up in adultery, and they get exposed when they get the platform, because there's not that training in righteousness, there's not that accountability. And so if you're given something at a small scale, how can you really transition to something that's granted bigger? And God may use you for for a moment with a smaller crowd or reaching certain amount of people, but ultimately it's the stewardship, taking care of what God has given to you. I think that stewardship is taking care of the gift that God has given us, and simply to steward the gospel with whatever gift or talent or calling that he has given you to step into. Stewarding
mm,
that well is, at the end of the day, is the most important thing. So to me, success is finding peace and contentment in what God has given me, and what he's called me to do, and walking into that. Because all the external things, like I said, the fame, the Instagram followers, all that stuff, I mean, that's all fun and cool. But if your heart is not in the right place, I mean, that
mm.
can really consume you. And I mean, celebrities talk about it all the time. People that I know who are constantly on scrolling and scrolling. I mean, it's really just deadening. It's really a pain. To deal with
Mhm.
those things, and you get wrapped up into it. So yeah, that, to me, success is that contentment and peace in God's calling and what He's given me.
I love that. That's something I've been focusing on. Like I'm trying to focus on this year is peace, man. Because I think
Mm,
we don't live in a world that's full of peace. And it's not even like something that we propagate much. We're not like, hey, you just want to live a life of peace, right? Like the
mm,
world is like, hey, you want to live a life of success and fulfillment and
mm.
money and like all these material possessions and like just grind your face off and get there and then you'll be
Like you
happy. And
got your
it's like,
retirement and you're good, and then
yeah, it's like
you know.
it's like happiness is down the road. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like, how do you
Yeah,
personally, you know what I'm saying? Like, happiness is
yeah,
down there later. Like, you'll get it later. Just work hard and then you'll be happy. You know what I mean?
right.
Like,
And the one thing that really,
mm,
really I've been thinking about, it kind of gets me kind of stirred up, is just like this American dream kind of mixed in with the gospel of Jesus, and like how like, I don't know why it's a lot. Even churches today, they combine it like wealth and finances. There's nothing wrong with that. I
right.
understand where they're coming from. But when it becomes that motivating factor, when it becomes a motivating factor, that's and takes over your heart in that way. But yeah, tying the American dream in this pursuit becomes a false hope,
Mm-hmm.
because you know, Jesus came on a donkey, not on the chariot. His disciples were, tortured and persecuted, and they were mocked, and Christians were mocked, and even in China and other places where they have to do underground churches where they can't be seen, and if they're caught, it's against the law and certain things, and it's a scary reality. So that's when it gets tied into that American dream, and God just wants you to be successful, and He wants you to be rich, and and it kind of, and a lot of times it kind of bothers me when there's nothing wrong with having nice things, because
Right.
the accessibility to this, capitalism in the society that we have opportunities to be successful. But when you
Mm-hmm.
start tying in, well, you know, if you believe in Jesus, then this, you're going to get a new Benz and this private jet. And, that's when it becomes dangerous. And, God, uses men with a lot of money. I mean, he's used kings in the Bible, and Solomon, and his in that whole story, Ecclesiastes. But even him, he's a vanity. Everything is vain, you
Mm-hmm.
know. A man who
Mm-hmm.
has had it all, concubines, has the highest in the highs and the lows. He had money, and he understand being a king, and that at the end of the day, like, it's just you get lost in the wind, and it leaves you empty and never satisfied. So, when it gets tied into that American dream and that becomes a priority, then and that's why most people can gravitate towards, false teachers or people that, sell that dream, is because they want that dream more than God. The Bible talks
Yeah.
about having itchy ears. You
Mm-hmm.
you want to have those things. If the preachers, and I feel like preachers that do that, they attack the weakness of a person,
Mm-hmm.
and that weakness is that financial instability, or a health, calamity, or something that is dealing with somebody. So they attack that need, and then people start believing like this is what God really wants for me, you
Mm-hmm.
know. So I think that becomes that dangerous line. But no, God is the healer. God, I'm not saying He can't heal. He is the healer. He can use people with finances and stuff like that. I'm not saying that's bad. It's just when you become consumed with that, that
Mm-hmm.
becomes the golden calf that you're worshiping. That, you know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that can't be your number one priority because it's like it's so
Mm,
crazy to me because we've all heard from rich, successful, famous people tell us like, yeah, this is not it, right? Like this is great, but like
mm,
this didn't make me happy. I got, X amount of dollars and I wasn't happy, or I got this much success and I wasn't happy. And we hear this from successful
mm,
people, but then we think for some, no, it'd be different with me. If I get a bunch of money, I'll be happy. But people that
mm.
have been there have told us this is not where happiness is. Like I got it and it wasn't
Right.
fulfilling. But we hear it and
Right.
we think for some reason we'll be different. Like, but God didn't design us to be, like I've always heard my dad say, like, and other pastors say, right, like God designed you with a specific hole in your heart that only He could fill. And we try to fill
Mm,
it with all kinds of different things and it never works.
mm.
And we hear it doesn't work
Right.
because people tell us that. And for some reason,
Mm-hmm.
why do you think that we still think that for us it'll be different?
Mm. Right.
You know what I mean?
Oh,
Like,
that's a valid point.
why do we think, well, no. If I get a bunch of money, I will be happy. But people have told
Hmm.
you that won't make you happy. And especially if you're a believer, like you said, and you get trapped in that, like, no, like I'll be like, it'll make me happier, right? Like I want God and this, which like again,
Hmm.
some people, like you've said, like there is a calling on certain people to steward that well, but it's such an idol for people. And it's again, I think I struggle with it too sometimes, of wanting material things, but
Right.
we
We all do.
know, especially as believers, we know that there's not fulfillment in that, but yet people
Hmm.
still run after it as if like, now I got to prove it to myself that that's not where happiness is, you know? Like,
Mm,
why do you think people still chase the things they know won't fulfill them? Why?
right.
I don't understand it.
Right.
And maybe it's just that there's no answer, because it is just the battle of your flesh that still wants the things of the flesh. So maybe that's the answer,
Mm,
is that it's a constant battle of the
yeah.
tension between the flesh and the spirit. I don't know, man. I don't have the
Hmm.
answers. I wish I did. But I always think about that. Even with myself, I'm like, man, there's times where I do want like things and I'm focused on things. And then I'll bring myself back and be like, that's not where it is, Kyle. You know this, and
Hmm.
but there's a constant
Right.
tension. I think maybe it's American culture. Like you were saying, the American
Yeah.
dream, like
The
we've been sold.
westernized. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
The westernized ideologies of, you know,
Mm-hmm.
holding on to those promises. And you talked about, just a second ago with the flesh and the spirit. I've been looking through the Bible project. It's how to study the Hebrew Bible with Tim Mackey, and listen to the podcast. And they're talking about God's spirit. It's called ruach, like the
Hmm.
Hebrew word. So it's like this life-giving agent. Like God
Hmm.
breathes life into us, right? He breathed life in the man to Adam, and I think dirt means Adamah or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And Adam is man, so Adam, so he comes from the dirt, and so it's crazy how God breathes life into us, and that's generally what he does when he transforms us, is that he gives us life to put to death the deeds of the body and to put on the new man, which is in Christ Jesus. In Ephesians 2, it talks about, being dead in your sin and your trespasses, following the course of this world, right? We're dead. We're unable to see the goodness of God because in Romans, what is it, 1, says he gives us over to our own desires and the lust of
Hmm.
our hearts, that we serve the creation rather than the creator. But God wants to transform us and to transition us with his life-giving spirit, his ruach, you
Hmm.
know, to breathe life into us. And that's when the fruits of the spirit come, peace, patience, joy, goodness, kindness, self-control, and all those things is him transforming us. And that's what God wants to do. And that's what people need to understand, is that it's not just, the gospel is not just a moral code or some type of religious duty, but it's God wanting a relationship with his people and to restore order back into its right place, this new creation.
Come
And
on.
then, you know what I'm saying? So
Mm-hmm.
that's
Oh,
that
you're
breathing life.
preaching. You're
Hey man,
preaching.
I'm passionate about it, man. I
I
just want
love
to
it.
grow. I just want to grow, man.
It's interesting. Like, at what point in your life did you like kind of come to a faith, or like kind of get passionate about your faith? Like, I know for me, like it took a lot of just like, mistakes and stupid things and
Sure.
just being an idiot, that, or getting
Yeah.
backed into a corner, or hitting rock bottom. Or I know you've been through some painful things. I think we all have, like heartbreaks and such. Like,
Mm,
what was the turning point for
yeah.
you where you're like, all right, that's enough. Like, I gotta fix this.
Yeah, so when I was 15, so I knew in middle school, like I wouldn't say that I really grew up in the church, but I had an understanding. I mean, my mom's background is Catholicism. Then we started going to a Lutheran church for a little bit. So it's kind of similar in some ways. So I was baptized with anointing of water, or like, stuff like that. Wasn't immersed or
Hmm.
anything. So I had like a little bit, plus my dad is black from the South. We're in the Bible Belt. So of course you're gonna
Yeah.
have some type of knowledge of God, or who he is to some extent. But
Sure.
yeah, so I feel like middle school, I knew, like, we all know right and wrong. I know God writes a law in our hearts. We know right and wrong. And I feel like that kind of was an early kind of conviction in a way, maybe more guiltiness in a way. And then when I turned 15, I feel like my high school struggles and stuff like that. I feel like, so I talked to my brother who is a believer as well, and he was really just sharing the word of God with me. And I feel like that's when the peace of God came, was when I was 15.
Hmm.
And then, was my walk pretty and perfect? No, after that. But I was seeking God with an honest heart. And then I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, which is autoimmune disease where your immune system attacks your beta cells that produce insulin. So without
Mm-hmm.
beta cells and insulin, your glucose levels will go up and you have to take insulin injections for the rest of your life. But thank God I only take long lasting, and I do eat more carbs than I usually do low carb, but I've been eating a little bit more carbs. I feel better.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so I was, came to the faith. A few months later, diagnosed with type 1. So it was like being put into the
Dang.
furnace, with a lifelong disease that you have to manage, and then juggling that. And then coming back, playing basketball. I was a sophomore in varsity. The point guard was out with mono, and then we played Flower Mound Marcus, and that's when Marcus Smart, who plays with Boston Celtics now, I played against him,
Come
Phil
on.
Forte, and then AJ Lucky, who was my teammate at Lubbock Christian. And so great players. And then I have a picture of Marcus Smart taking a charge on me when I was getting to the basket. So I came back from being diagnosed with this and kind of recently coming to Christ. And yeah, man, it's crazy. That was kind of it. And then later
Mm-hmm.
on, I think in college, there was a lot of loneliness, and even doing ministry with Young Life Ministry, it just felt like isolation a lot. It
Mm.
was a really dark depression, like depression was heavy. And I think it had to do with type 1 and stuff like that, and other choices that I'm not grateful. Never been in a relationship, been in and out of situationships that I wish I never
Hmm.
was in. And I feel like that clarity was like, man, I don't want to do this anymore,
Mm-hmm.
in this culture. So, and I'm guilty of it, of like not really investing in somebody and then ghosting somebody, or it's like a quick hookup, or it's like a quick fast thing, and then it just you don't follow up, and it just kind of turned me off. And now it really just turns me off to the whole idea of a relationship, and that needs healing. But I think those, realizations of, man, this is just not life giving, and getting out of that is like, man, God offers so much more. And yeah, that's kind
It's
of like a
good. I
little
like that you
backdrop.
said situationship.
Yeah. What is a situation, man? And yeah, clarity is key, and that's
Mm.
what is lost in my generation. I know you might be a little older than me. I'm not saying you old, man, but you might be a little older. But
I'm
our generation.
34. Yeah.
Oh no, you're good, man. You're good. I'm 26, so yeah.
Yeah,
I
man.
guess you're
Go
still a
ahead.
millennial, though, right? Yeah,
Yeah,
I
yeah, yeah.
guess. So, I mean, I am too. So I mean, it is. You got dating apps and you got all these things going on and relationship
Mm-hmm.
stuff. I just don't want to do anything. So I
I
had to
hear it.
delete all that. It's just healthy. Social media, I deactivated that too. It's been
I
a
know. I
big
saw
help.
that because I was gonna DM you on Instagram, and I was like, oh,
Where'd it go?
he's gone. That's all right. I have
Yes.
his phone number.
Yep, that's right. So that's kind of my take. Just really, I guess at an early age, understanding my need for God, and just,
Mm.
Paul going to Damascus, he, was persecuting Christians, and Jesus came and was like, "Why are you persecuting me?" And he was blinded, had scales on his eyes, and went to Damascus, met up with the one guy, and then his eyes, the scales fell off his eyes and stuff like that. So it was kind of like I was blind and now I could see type thing, you know.
Mm.
And it's not a crazy testimony, but anything, the
It's
simplicity of
real
just
though.
your need for God. Yeah, it's a very real thing. So, what about
I like that you
yourself?
said. I
Oh,
like
go
that you
ahead.
said. No, go ahead. Well, I like that you said clarity is key. Like I
Mm,
think that's so lost on, especially our generation and younger people, is there's all this just like, don't really want to say this or assume
mm,
this or I think this, so I'm gonna act like this. It's like, just ask
mm,
people for clarity. And if you're on the other side, like drive for clarity, like
mm,
give people clarity, right? Like even in relationships, like if it's something that's a big deal, communicate it. Like I think that's part of the reason we don't have clarity is we're poor communicators. We don't
mm,
like to ask questions and we don't like to communicate like honestly and
mm,
vulnerably. I think our generation lacks vulnerability, and I,
mm,
I think that there's people like you, thankfully, that are willing to be vulnerable and say, hey, this is what I've been through. This is the pain and the heartbreaks I've felt. This is what I've
yeah.
learned. Like these are the mistakes I've made because we paint these pretty pictures on the internet, right? Like,
Hmm.
but none of it's real. Like even me, like if
Mm,
someone looks at my Instagram, they're probably like, "Oh, this guy's just doing great." I'm like, "No, I mean, like I mess up all the time. I fail. I make stupid choices. I hurt people. Like."
mm,
So I think when you say clarity is key, I love that statement because I believe it fully. Like
mm,
we, and I've heard people say this, like clarity is providing clarity is loving, right? Like even if it's like, hey, this isn't working out, or I don't know if you're the right one, like that's loving. To give people clarity is to
mm,
show them love. And to
Right.
withhold clarity is to cause confusion, which is not loving, but we think, oh
Mm,
no, I just don't want to hurt their feelings. But not telling people the truth actually is hurting them. You know what I'm
mm,
saying? Like I've heard do you know who JP is? Jonathan Pecluda?
He used to be at Watermark Dallas, but I think he's in Waco now. I've
Yeah.
met him before and talked to him.
He's a cool cat, man. And
Yeah, he's a
he
great
says
teacher.
that, yeah, isn't he amazing? That guy is like speaking to our generation. Praise God. But he talks about that, about like removing confusion, right? Like
Mm,
driving for clarity and removing confusion, because that's loving. Like to leave someone confused and emotional in an emotional state is not loving, right? Like, so under the guise of I don't want to hurt people's feelings, you're really causing more damage to people by not
mm,
just being honest and truthful. But I think we live in this culture that's like, we all just don't want to like hurt each other's feelings, right? But like
right.
honesty and clarity is what's really loving. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. No, 100%.
We
Clarity
live
is key. Clarity
clarity
is
is
key.
key. That is such a solid statement. Like now that we're already talking about relationships and stuff, though, like, do you mind talking about like some of the stuff? Because I think you've, from our conversation and just like watching you, it seems like you've picked up a lot of like life lessons from relationships. What can
Yeah.
you speak on that a little bit? Like just things, relationships and life has taught you through, you know,
Yeah. Just
dealing
like
with the
dating
opposite gender.
relationships or
Yeah,
okay. Man, I don't even know
because
where to
we all are
start.
going to deal
I
with the
mean,
opposite gender.
yeah. I'd say, well, I never been in an adult relationship, but I've been
Mhm,
in a high school relationship for a little bit, not too long. I don't really count it because like now as I've matured and I've grown, I'm not even that same little kid anymore.
mhm,
But I've learned a lot from that. I feel like, man, since I was recently coming to Christ, or came to Christ recently at that age, I feel like I was so pressy with, you know, we need to read the Bible together all the time. And what do you need to be praying. And it was like, and I think it was more damaging to her and myself that it just ended up not working out.
mhm,
And, still had a great relationship with her mother and everything, but it was more of a mutual kind of breakup thing. But I felt like I was too over the top and it just kind of disrupted the whole thing. So,
mhm,
but I got nothing but love for them. And they're still, I still got love for them for sure. But I think through learning that, it kind of set me up for future things and what to improve on, how to do better, in a relationship. And you can't. I mean, if you're not a husband of a wife, you can't really. I'm not trying to. I can't really lead you. I guess I don't think you should be leading somebody if you're just
mhm,
dating. You know,
mhm,
that's a whole dynamic. I'm not an expert at dating. I've been on a few dates. It just, I guess, as in my adulthood and dating and stuff, it's just weird. I don't know. I feel like some women may just want the attention,
mhm,
and somebody buying them a meal because, like, following up or, it was a great time, great conversation, but then following up, you know, like, when's the next time? Can we, meet up, go hang out, or do something? And it's kind of beating around the bush, but it's not there. But then they would randomly pop up in text messages later down the line. I'm like, so what are you entailing? You know what I'm
mhm,
saying? And I'm just really confused. And I'm like, there's one girl I went on a date with, and it was Christmas, and she wished me like a Merry Christmas, and I started talking. I was saying, hey, how's everything going? It's been a minute, but it's always like little sporadic things.
mhm,
Yeah, so really just you got to set yourself up for success in these things and understanding why you want to date to begin with, why you want to
mhm,
be in a relationship, what's the purpose of it. And I feel like sometimes I've even dropped the ball with maybe some good girls and I just wasn't really healed from the past and maybe it
mhm,
just kind of flaked out, so I feel bad for that in some ways. But it's just not, it's about timing, man. And I just don't, right now I'm just content with my singleness. I'm just really
mhm,
fine but being by myself. Maybe it's something in the future, but I'm not like, with all those negative experiences and things like that. I'm just like, I don't know. This is what I want to do, maybe, but I just haven't really, maybe I did meet the person that I'm supposed to be with, and maybe I just completely ignored it until it comes back around. I don't know what the story dynamic is. But yeah, that's kind of me, man. I think the biggest thing is like, I never was like promiscuous or anything in high school. I always focused on basketball. I wasn't really a partier or things, but certain situations of physicality, I think that really is damaging when you
Mm,
give a piece of yourself away to somebody that is not yours, and same vice versa as well. Because man, that's something that God really administered for marriage, and to be with
mhm,
that person, and where the two become one, and that's so vital. And I think
mm,
that's what I've really beat myself up, growing up, not really saving that for marriage, and the person that I really want to be with and have a relationship with in the right
mhm,
context. So I think that really shaped my relationship view moving forward. And now that kind of like, it doesn't, I'm not fearful of relationships, but it's like, man, it just doesn't make me, I'm not excited or as ecstatic as what I once was, when I
mhm,
was younger and I was like, oh, I want a girlfriend, or first year of college. Like, is this where I'm going to meet my wife, and, or is she going to be in a ministry or something like that? And so now I just don't really get as excited for it. And I feel like dates become so numb. And it's just like, I feel like opening doors aren't appreciated as much, or complimenting. Everything is so fast and consuming, and like it's like microwave popcorn. Like that's what relationship is. Everything is like now and now and now, and swipe right, swipe right, swipe
yeah.
right. Oh, this doesn't look right. Left, and it's just like it's just so we just are just consumers. We just consume, consume, and that's the whole dynamic of what we talk about with the spirit and the flesh. Is that the flesh, our desires, our wants, just constantly crave and want more, or want something better. This
Mhm,
person has more money. Oh, they drive this car. Oh, they look this way. They're built this way. She has more curves. Look at that. And you start, dealing with that mentality. So I think the whole consumption, overly consuming mindset that we have, it really has turned me off now to the idea of a relationship that needs healing. And I know the
mhm,
Lord can heal it, if I just let that bitter guard down. But
mhm,
it's something I need to grow in. But I haven't really had many. I haven't had a relationship in my adulthood. You
mhm.
know, so I don't know your take on it, but
Yeah.
that's kind of like my experience. So yeah.
No, bro, I would agree with you. I think, I'm single too and have been for years, right? And but just like you, I think it's something we would want at some point. But it does take time and like healing, and like life hurts, man. And like when you do
Yeah.
have these experiences where or you sense that people are just trying to take, and like you
Mm,
said, have a nice date, and oh man, I enjoyed that experience, and oh man, that was cool, but on to the next and on to the next. It's like just like we were talking about, like we've become so like fast paced, like me, and it's like I think
right.
part of the problem is it's so self focused. Like, what can I get from this? Like, what can
Mm,
I find on this app? What guy or girl can I find to make
mm,
me feel good? It's so me focused, but like
mm,
this, like Jesus came to give it away. And like
right.
true love is what we give, not what we take. But I
Right. It's
think,
not a Hollywoodized,
yeah.
romantic movie, but it's to serve the other person. And I think there's beauty in that because, like you said, like with how we're influenced by culture, is just that mentality of this is for me. It's all conditional based on what you can give me, how this can serve me. This is what I want, as opposed to, man, laying your life down for somebody. Because what if your spouse has cancer,
Mm-hmm.
or a chronic illness? What if they lose their hair? They get a little chunkier. They're not gonna be. You're gonna get old and wrinkly, and they. What if they never hear or see or speak again? Like, how are you gonna react to that if they lose an arm?
Mm-hmm.
So it's just so conditional. It's not unconditional. It's not, you
Mm,
know,
that's it.
it's not freely given. It's not, love is a service. It's not an emotion itself, which the bubbly feelings are real, but it's more of like a service to somebody,
Come
despite their
on.
flaws, and accepting them for their flaws. And that's the example of Jesus, how he treats his bride, his church, is accepting them, even if they're flawed, even if they're broken. And that's how we should have that perception of and accept as well. So yeah,
Come
and
on.
I don't know, man. I never married anybody, so
Same. We'll figure it out.
we'll figure it out. So
Yeah. But
yeah,
that
man.
that's a great statement. Like, uh, love is to serve others, because it's not about feelings. Because if it was all about feelings, well, feelings always go away, right? Like you
Right,
feel happy, but like, have you just felt happy for the past 6 years? No, no one can say
right.
that. right? It's like feelings come and go. And so
Hmm.
I think that like I've heard people say like JP said this, I think like your feelings are valid, but they're not reliable because they come and
Mm,
go with the wind, right? Like today I feel
mm,
good, tomorrow I had a bad day, now I had a good day. Now I like this girl, now I like this
right,
girl. Like,
right,
like your feelings will come and go. Like what's the foundation? Like
right.
what's the
It's picky.
foundation of like what you define as love and what will carry through and last till the end? Because your feelings won't. So then the question becomes, well, what will? Right? Like
Mm,
if my feelings fade, then what am I actually looking for? Am I looking for a feeling, or am I looking for like character traits and qualities in somebody? I think I think you've kind of said this, like we look for feelings and the instant thing that makes us feel good. But it's
right.
like what you should be looking for is character and qualities that are lasting in somebody, because the feelings
Mm,
will fade. And then what's left? The only thing that's left when your feelings fade is the true character of somebody. You know what I
mm,
mean? So I think that's where we
right.
miss it in culture. And I'm guilty as charged, bro. Like I've been guilty
Likewise.
so many times in my life of just looking for a quick hit of happiness, or I like
Right,
the attention, like you said, but like it's not what lasts. And like if I want
right.
someone or you want someone that is going to see us for us, then we also have to be that person that's looking for character. Because we can't be
Hmm.
like, hey man, I'm looking for someone with character, but then not be a person of character. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because that's also not
It's
being
true.
loving. Then it's about
Right.
you again. I want someone with character, but are you being someone with character? Because if you find someone with character, but you can't give them character back, well, then that's not loving either. You know
Right.
what I'm saying?
This whole dynamic is crazy, man. This whole dynamic is crazy. It's like God just
Right.
putting two sinners in like a playpen. It's like, have fun.
Like, hey, good luck, you two. We'll see you at the end.
That's why
Yeah.
on Born Sinner on J. Cole's album, he has a song called Runaway, and he talks
Hmm.
about that struggle between having a good girl at home folding clothes, but then he's on tour and there's like some attractive females, and and now he's had success and fame, and now he can get that model chick that's on the poster, and you know get the celebrities, and so he kind of struggles and wrestles with that, that
Hmm.
love of true love, someone who's the character's there, they're serving, they're folding the clothes, but then you got someone that's on tour that's kind of tempting, and it's tempting. So I love that's why I like Cole, because he juggles that duality and that relatability of like, man, this is real life. And
That's
even
and
Big Crit had a song called Mixed Messages. I got a
mm,
whole lot of mixed messages in my songs. Am I wrong to feel this way? That song, and he
mm,
talks about it too, in the same way.
that's huge. I think that's so right. Like, and that's why I love people like that, because those creatives that will be authentic. Because again, we can all relate to that. All
Hmm.
of us can relate to that stuff. But if nobody
Right.
says it, then we're all like, well, I guess I gotta relate to this artist over here who talks about the same stuff. Like, I don't hear anything else. So, and then we have a culture that all becomes the same and is trying to be like these celebrities who are
Mm,
just not being authentic with them. And so when you want to be
right.
like somebody, but they're not authentic, you are just going to become not authentic or inauthentic, because that's what you're trying to
Mm,
model.
right.
That's why I love people like you,
Right.
that I'm saying like your goal is to be relatable and authentic. There's no time stamp on that. That could be forever. You can literally make
Mm,
music forever now, because you're going to always just be speaking from a place of truth, which is the most impactful
mm,
anyways. Where
right.
what
100%.
I know we're going to wrap up here in a few, but I do want to ask you, like, as far as music goes, like where are you at, and kind of like, do you have a vision for where you're headed, or are you just gonna keep your head down and do what you're doing now, or like where are you at kind of with music, your
Yeah.
music career?
Man, it's Yeah, man. So I just there's so many avenues now with social media. I really don't like
Mhm.
TikTok, but I know it's a good source. So I haven't even been on that. I know there's no, I don't know how the algorithm works, but constantly posting. I'm just tired of constantly posting. That's why I deactivated social media, and I'm tired of like looking on my feed and seeing these things, and I just deactivated it because I'm just burnt out, man. And I feel
Mhm.
so much more life without it. Like I'm
Mhm.
communicating with people. I know how to talk to people better. I know how to engage well and stuff like that. I don't need to message or check on somebody's story, or then you check your how many people are looking at your story, and then you know that one girl that keeps looking at your story and it kind of gives you that boost, you know what I'm saying? Like, oh, she's low key kind of, you know what I'm saying? It's in people's
Yeah,
head.
that's
I
real.
swear. So I'm like, no, man, I just got to delete this joint. So I deactivated everything.
Hmm.
And I don't know when I come back. I kind of want, after this conversation, it made me want to do one of those little lyric videos I do. But I might come back with that. But I still am working on a project. I'm still having that creative juice. I really want to produce for
Good.
people behind the scenes. I still got some great songs. I'm working on this project, this album called Almost Feelings.
Mm,
It's a whole relationship joint. I
cool.
got songs on there. I got an intro, the intro. I got Trust Issues is the third track. What's the second track? Oh, Heartbreak. I released that single on December 13th. So the intro, Heartbreak. I got Trust Issues. I got a song talking about being ghosted, and it goes
Hmm.
both ways. And then I got friend zone, getting in the friend zone, different things. So I'm kind of talking about different aspects, mixed signals, different things of basically what we had
Dang.
talked about. So this whole project is how God has kind of grown me in my singleness, but all these negative and positive experiences that I've had in relationships, and talking from my perspective and others' perspectives of what I've heard stories of and stories
Mm,
about. And yeah, it's super relatable. This is probably this project. I think it's better than the last one for sure. I think the
mm.
totality, the evolution of Broderick Perkins is more like I've grown so much. I'm seeing, so the east side is, as I grow older, I see the perspective of my dad's side of the family better. Hoopty is like, man, I can see a real value relationship with that. If you see that music video now, as I've
That
grown
track is
over, as I've
dope.
evolved, I
I
appreciate that.
really dig that one, man. Like
Thank
I
you.
love, and the video was fire, like with the
Yeah,
old
Levi Miller board.
pickup and like,
That's right.
man, that was such a cool concept. Did you come up with the
Dude,
concept?
me and Levi Millibor, he's my best friend. That's my video
Uh-huh.
guy for life.
Uh-huh.
He's just ready to shoot, man. And I'm just blessed to
Love
have
that.
friends that believe in what I'm doing and like to push and want to create with me. I think that's the beauty of it. Don't want to
Mm,
ask for anything in advance. They're just like, hey, how can we create these ideas? So we both kind of chimed in on it. And my friend Whitley was like, yeah, I'm down to do it. So it was this awesome experience. So we got hoop. So the evolution is just all these different songs based on how I've grown and how I perceive. So it's kind of more of a
mhm,
compilation of things, not just a fluidity of an album, like
mhm,
like start to finish, where it's like a story per se.
mhm,
But it's kind of how I've grown and matured. So with that perspective, then you got what's another song? Novocaine, you know, the price of fame that comes with it, you know, music and stuff like that that it never satisfies. I looked
mhm,
at Solomon for that experience. Track for what is it? Coffee Brown, a relationship compared to Hoopty, which is deceptive and not good for you. Hoopty is like, this is the woman that I should value, but as I get
mhm,
older, I've had negative experiences of Miss Coffee Brown. That's kind of
mm,
bittersweet, you know. And then was at the East Side Interlude, and then I have Freedom, and then Dreams, and then Symptom. The Symptom talked about, a deeper rooted issue, and as I grow older and process these things in my childhood and stuff, and my, growing up, felt like a lack of fatherhood, but
mm,
my stepdad was there, but I still have this hole because I want to be closer to my dad, which we are.
mm,
But as I grow older, I can see it's more of the evolution of what I see from the outside in now. But this
mhm,
project, Almost Feeling, is more like a story
mm.
um, of relationships, and there'll be some good female vocalists on featuring on it. So it's gonna be super
Cool.
dope. It's about 40 to 60% done. Still
Mhm.
got to get some guitar parts for my friend to play the chords, and I just love producing and arranging the song structure. I think it's so much fun. I
Did
might
you
add one
produce
more
the whole
song.
thing?
Yeah, I produced the whole thing, all the drum
Dope.
instrumentation. I usually get my friends to play. I can play some keys. I can figure out some chords, but
Mhm,
I usually send it to my friend who plays the guitar, and another guy who plays bass or whatever, or sax or whatever, who I can get into it, and then they can just put their spin on it. And then I just love arranging it once I get the WAV file, and I'm just
mhm,
kind of bouncing ideas. So yeah, I just love producing it. So all the tracks, and it gives me the freedom to do what I want instead of
mm.
going on YouTube and having this repetitive loop beat. I like breaking down instruments and taking out stuff, adding the bridge and stuff. So yeah, I love this. So crazy. We talked about relationships, almost feelings. That's what it's called, because it's like
Cool.
I'm not quite there yet, but or somebody might not really be feeling me, but they are, or or vice versa. And it's like, well, I'm almost there, looking for
Mm,
a relationship, but I'm not. Like, we've almost had feelings together. You're playing games with me,
mm,
but we're not. It's like that almost dynamic. So that's the idea I have. I might change it though. It's still fresh, and I can always change the title or songs or add a song, which I'm thinking about doing. So yeah, I'm still working on projects, but I'm still trying to figure out, career wise, like it's hard because I don't really like the mundane, normal 9 to 5,
mm,
even though if I need to do it. But I love people and I love serving people. So my degree has given me opportunities to really invest in, you know, work for people in the community. But I
mm,
also love music as well. But the chances of doing music full time is very hard.
mm,
But if you're consistent, who knows what will happen. But I'm kind of juggling that. Like, what should I do long term? Should I just do this for fun? Should I just go
mm,
hard? I've gotten great responses from people. Understand marketing and playlisting better. And it's just the financial piece is the hard thing. But I
mm,
am investing in more studio equipment and hardware. I'm gonna get the DBX 560, 500 series compressor limiter. Took some engineering courses. I'll take more as time. One of my friends that has done my songs has
mm,
helped me out and what gear to get so I can start. If I can pump out like a single and a video every month, that'd be ideal. Eventually, one single, one video with Levi, we could just work as a team and just put out content. I think that'd be dope. And I think what I'm doing, I really wanted to step back to check my motives too. Because when
mm,
you get on social media, I start comparing myself to people who are terrible. They have a
mm,
huge following or something like that. So I really just want to step back, grow my relationship with the Lord, like really grow into my relationship with the Lord, not just kind of read the Bible app when it pops up on a notification, but actually dive into
mm.
the Word, to be more prayerful, just in praying for others. And I've been doing the region 12-step thing. I think it
A
is. It's a
watermark?
groundwork. Yeah, it's through
Yeah,
Watermark, but
bro.
it's City Bridge
Yeah.
was Watermark Plano. So I'm doing that. Just kind of growing in independency. But I think God is really this year is really. I just feel the newness in how God's working in my life. So it's good
Come
to just
on.
take a break because social media is not going anywhere, music's not going anywhere,
Mm,
and I just want to prioritize what's important right now. But I'll come back eventually. But it's hard, man. But yeah, I just wanted to check my motives and see why I'm really doing this, and that's why I just really don't like it on social media, man. I feel
yeah.
free. I never had. I deleted it my freshman year of college. Had no Instagram. Never got on Twitter. I
Mm,
just didn't care. So I'm kind of like in that mind state, and just, I like talking to people and having
mm.
conversations like this, or
Heck
hanging
yeah.
out and stuff like that. So yeah, so I'm still creating, but just stepping back a little bit and kind of reevaluating and kind of getting that freshness of my relationship with God again, and not playing back and forth, and walking in that lukewarmness. It feels like
Come
that
on.
sometimes. You get stagnant, and I
Yeah.
felt like I was like that. Not that I wasn't ever seeking God or I wasn't serving, but I feel like my heart is being positioned in the right place to
Mm,
really honor Him with my life, and I just feel
mm.
good. That's why I'm like content with my singleness. I'm like, I'm good, man.
Come on.
So yeah.
Bro, that's interesting to hear that you're going to Regen at City Bridge, because I went to Regen over there when it was still Watermark Plano, and I go to
Yep.
Watermark Dallas now. But that experience, that year long 12 steps of just discipleship and working through things and vices, like,
Mm,
man, that was the pivotal moment in my life where that year changed my life. Like, that put me
mm.
back on the right path. So like that's it, it's cool that like we have that connection, and I'm glad you're doing that,
Yeah,
bro.
man.
It's You already know, like it's so fruitful, like it's so good.
Mm.
Like the products that come out of that, like internally, priceless, like absolutely priceless. It's
I mean,
interesting
it
because
is
just
free
as I
too.
think, yeah, and it's free,
Besides the book,
bro.
except for the book,
Rehab
but other
did
than
not
that.
was not free for me. So get yourself some
Yeah.
regen if you need it. But here's the
Yeah.
thing, bro. As I think about it, because like my mind works fast and that's good and bad. Like as I think about it, it's interesting. It'll be interesting to see in a few years, like how God uses your faithfulness. Because, bro, I don't have the willpower that you do to step away from all that, and I built all these relationships online. And so like it takes a lot of what's the word, discipline, to step away from that, I think, and to remove yourself from the bubble that all the world is living in over here, and to go, no, I'm gonna come over here and work on myself. So like it'll be interesting, as I think, to see like what your faithfulness will look like. Like you're being faithful now. So it'll be interesting to see how God uses that over the next few years. Cause like, I don't know, just in
Mm,
my gut, I'm like, huh. He's gonna do something. Like God doesn't
mm,
work in you to produce nothing. Right. I think we forget that because like we said, we want instant results. So we don't
mhm.
realize that like if you're faithful, it's not the prosperity of God will give you great things, but he will use you. And that's fulfilling, even if it's hard.
Mm,
Like so,
mhm.
man, just to commend you. I think like what you're doing by stepping away, trying to position yourself correctly in your faith and prioritize that, man, like that's encouraging to me because I think like you will look back and be happy that
Yeah,
you're not just following the crowd. Like I don't know, man.
yeah.
I'm excited, like just to hear, just to talk this whole time. Like I'm excited. Like I'm excited for you. I think God's doing
I
some stuff that's
appreciate that.
gonna it's gonna prove it'll play out well where you'll see his hand in a few years and be like,
Right.
man, that's crazy, right? Like to see where
Yeah.
I am now, like that's kind of my story, man. Like where I'm at now, when I look back, I'm like, that's
Mhm.
crazy. Like
Yeah.
God did that. Like that's wild. And
Mm,
it gives me chills. And like I have that feeling. And like again, I don't go off my feelings, but bro, like I don't know, I have like a sensing that like God's doing something and you're gonna look back on this time and be like, man, that's
mm.
wild. Like only God could have done that. I don't know,
Yeah,
man.
I'm just ready to
I just had to
change and
say
grow,
that because I
man.
felt it.
I just, I appreciate that, man. It's definitely very encouraged by this whole conversation. And yeah, I'm just looking forward to changing and growing, man. Just breaking
Mm,
those bad habits. And I don't want to be, 40, 56 years old looking back like, dang, man, I didn't really change. Like, I know,
mhm,
like, God's spirit can change us. And I know it's true. Like, I'm convinced, of what he's done for us. And I just want to walk into that. And I feel like I hadn't really surrendered. Like, while I was
mhm,
doing music in college and doing ministry and stuff, there's a part of me that just was not committed.
mhm,
Something was still, God still had to, poke at to get my attention
mhm,
and coming to that realization eventually of like, man, it's just time for change. And I'm not
mhm,
into New Year's resolutions like that, or but there's nothing wrong with setting goals and things like that. But
mhm,
it just feels like a fresh new season for me, and I feel good just stepping back and kind of getting away from like you said, the social media bubble and what the world is doing and all this craziness, and really growing. And I told one of my mentors, he wrote me a letter back in 2016,
mhm,
when I was a sophomore in college, because I was really codependent on people for a lot of things, for like answers from my faith and wanting that relationship and be fulfilled by that, and constantly venting to somebody, like treating them as if they were my God in a way.
mhm,
And then I read that, man, I think earlier this year or maybe last year in December sometime. And I mean, it really made me tear up.
mhm,
My mentor, Mike, is like my dad. And I reread it. And then a couple weeks ago, I wrote back to that letter from,
mhm.
what is it, 6 years ago? Really, 6 years
That's
ago.
cool.
Wow. And I responded to him and shared it on Google Docs. And I was like, man, it's time to debunk bad theology. It's time to, you know, be the man that God designed me to be, and
Come on.
become independent on my own and not be codependent. So I just
Mhm.
wanted to respond in this letter. So yeah, man, this is time for change, and I'm excited for what's to come. So
I'm excited too, bro. I think yeah, yeah. I said what I had to say, but like, yeah, I'm excited for you, man. Like
I appreciate it.
yeah, yeah. God's doing something, man. I don't know. That's the thing. Like sometimes God's doing something, and you have no clue what it is. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? Like, but it doesn't matter. That's not your job to figure out the
Mm,
future, right? It's your job to be faithful in the present. So I
mm.
commend you, man. Now I would normally end it by asking where people can find you, but you know what? I'm gonna ask you a different question because you're gonna say you can't find me. You can't
Only on
find me.
YouTube. You got YouTube. I mean,
Okay, there you go.
everything's at Broderick Perk. BRODERICKPERK. I mean, that's my Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. But YouTube is youtube.com/Broderick Perk, or you can just type in Broderick Perkins music and it will pop up. The Heartbreak single is out, dropped December 13th, and getting some streams on Spotify. And so, yeah, check it out, baby. Well, I'll be
Come
back.
on,
But it's good to
come
take a little
on.
break. I like going on hiatus, going MIA. People are like, "Have you died, man? Like, I haven't heard from you, bro." Like,
Well, I'm
I know
responding,
I'm still
so
here.
I'm alive.
I'm alive. Yeah, I'm here. But yeah, it's just good, man. But I appreciate it, man. I'm looking forward to
Yeah,
meeting you in
bro.
person and
Let's do
getting
it.
coffee. So,
I'm pumped.
yeah, man.
I enjoyed this conversation, man. I appreciate your authenticity. Like, thank you for being someone that wants to be a person that others can look up to. Like, we need
I
you. We
appreciate it.
need people like you. From one person to another. Like, we need you, man. So like, keep doing the work. We need the world needs you, right? The future needs you. These kids need you. I need you. Like, people need you. So
Mm,
just know your life
I
has meaning and
appreciate that,
purpose,
brother.
man. Absolutely.
I appreciate that, brother. Thank you.
Absolutely. Okay, man. Well, thank you for being on here, bro. Like, I appreciate the time and the conversation. And hopefully we'll have a round two in the not too distant future.
Let's do it. I'm down.
Okay, dope. Well, you know what, ladies and gentlemen, this has been another episode of Inside the Mirror podcast. I truly enjoyed this conversation. I hope you did too. If you did or if you didn't, just let me know. Either way, feedback is welcome. So this is Kyle David, Inside the Mirror podcast. I'm out. Have a good night.